Okay, so we are having a few problems. The hydraulic cylinder, and this is a new one for the O-ring and the backup washer type. Got this from Sparex. Kind of starts to go in, but doesn't and rocks, so it's not a million miles away. So what I've done is I've measured it with the micrometer, and that comes in get the right way around, as we can hopefully see. That comes in at 2 thou no, sorry, line, as we can see, that comes in at 3 thou under the 2.5 inch, which is fine. And we've tried that around, and it comes in at the 3 thou under the 1/2 inch. So what we've done is we've put the bore gauge in here and set it to 0, and then just literally pop it in the bore, and we can see that the highest point, the piston cylinder, the hydraulic cylinder, comes in at, there it is, 0.06 mil oversize. There's 0.04, 3.5, spin it round, 0.404, 0.3, 0.3 again. So as we can see, it's not quite round and concentric, so there's a little bit of ovality in it, but what it tells me is I don't need to hone the whole thing, because apart from clearly a problem on this top lip, the rest of it is oversized. So there should be 0.02 mil is 5 thou, and we've got averaging 0.4, so we've got 10 thou there, 3 thou there. We should have 13 thou clearance between the piston and the cylinder barrel, but it won't go in, as we can see. And this piston starts to go in, but the original piston is nowhere near. So I'm going to get some emery cloth and just take a bit off of here. I don't want to use a honing stones because it's already oversized down here somewhere. And it's clearly just a problem with when they've put the machining on, and like the casting's got the taper on it or whatever. There's a bit of a high spot here somewhere which is stopping it going on. So I'm going to get some emery cloth and just rub around this, and hopefully we can get it in. But if we put the piston in there, we can see which way it rocks and which way it's tight. So it's tight across here, so that is where we need to actually concentrate on just putting the emery cloth around these little bits just to get that freed up. And now it's stuck. Lovely. Let's get that back out. managed to get a ring compressor on that just to try and squash it back to its original size for a little bit, so it like keeps its memory. Now it's being stretched a little bit, so we're gonna find a ring compressor. Just pop that on just to pull it all back in, and we should be good. So we'll leave that now, so that will hopefully pull the leather seal back in after stretching it to get it over. We give that 5-10 minutes, then we can put the O-ring on, and then we can knock it into the hydraulic cylinder. Now I've got the piston in the piston ring compressor. It's just a standard piston ring compressor. I've put the leather backup washer in. I've had to machine 2mm out the groove width this way to make the groove wider, to let me get the leather seal in, the backup washer and the O-ring. I don't know why, but the piston wouldn't fit in the cylinder in the first place. The original piston wouldn't fit in the cylinder. Soaked the backup washer in oil for a few days so that it was supple to get it on. I think it then probably swelled a bit too much because the piston was delayed in delivery. Tried squashing the piston, tried squashing the leather seal to get all the oil out of it and make it a bit flatter. Didn't have a lot of success with that, so yeah, given up and machined the groove 2mm wider. So I can put some oil on here now and get the O-ring on, and then hopefully get the piston into the cylinder, and it's going to be a tight fit, a very tight fit. Got the O-ring in now and the leather backup washer behind it. Pre-oiled in the cylinder. Yeah, some oil's on the O-ring. Hopefully it will go in, so let's have a go. So it should, in theory, all just tap straight in. Like that doesn't really, is it? Ooh. It's going. It's in. It's a bit bloody tight. Yeah, I think it might take a bit of bedding in that. She's tight, very tight. But the piston was a really tight fit into the cylinder anyway, so I'm going to tap it in and see what happens. But the hydraulic pressure will push it back out, and we should get enough leverage on the arms to push it back down, and then it should just bed itself in. Well, yeah, hopefully. It's tight anyway, shouldn't leak. Shouldn't. First thing we need to do in the rebuild is put that back in there. So that goes through the back into there, might even go through from the front, but anyway, so we'll put some oil onto the clevis pin and we will slip that in. Should have got this zinc plated too, but well, is that even going to fit? There we go. So I've been debating whether to use the original split pins or to use new ones, but the only new ones I can find aren't very nice. They're like quite cheap and not nice. Another pair of pliers. There we go. As long as it don't come out, we are good. Okay, so that now is installed on there, ready for the back to go on, and then we can put the lift cylinder on. So I think the next thing to do will be the lift cylinder. We'll put the O-ring in there before we forget. It's always nice to see everything with a little bit of oil, just so that it's able to move where it wants to. And it's not critical to do in here, but I think what is more important is the top face here, where it fits onto the actual cylinder itself. So pistons in the cylinder, they should fit through there like so, and then let the hydraulic cylinder sit on there. We'll get the bolts in that, we'll get the donkey dick in as well, make sure that goes in before we do anything else. Again, if these split pins are looking in reasonably good condition, I'm going to use them over the new cheaper ones that I see, because the cheaper ones are just cheap. And I'm quite sure if they've lasted this long, they'll do for what I want in the future. Some people like to bend them all the way around, but you're just putting more stress on the metal and there's more chance of it actually snapping, so I just don't see the point in that myself. But that's on, that's in, that's fine, that's not a problem now. We'll get the bolts for there. We need to drill out and retap 2 new nuts, which I do have in my bag here. One of the nuts, the half the thread in it's like damaged, so to keep consistency of 11/16, we're going to drill these out and retap them to fit the original bolts, which is 1/2 inch UNF. And one of the bolts is damaged, so, which is that one, a bit hard to see but the thread's rounded over, so what we're going to do is, if we can, put these 2 in instead. Now I'm not bothered about them having the flat on because I've got it off and I can use a spanner to hold it in place, so that's not a problem for me. So we'll put 2 new bolts in there and what we'll do is we'll put some copper grease anti-seize on them as well. There we go, so they'll both fit in, and we do the same with them 2. And what we'll do, we put some Loctite on the bottom of the nut just to seal it up and keep the water out. Put the control fork onto the draft control linkage now, put the hydraulic cylinder back on, the donkey dicks back on, just putting the pins in here. So we'll just grab hold of them and separate them out. Make sure they don't fall off. Remember that one? A bit tricky to get to. Wind's picking up. And that, pop it over just to make it a bit tidier. There we go. So I've got the pin on this side as well. All my bits are blowing over. Good. Yeah, so we can now do the hydraulic cylinder up properly and start building up the track control. Put this bit away. So we've copper greased the bolts in preparation. Put them in. We put some Loctite on the base of the nut. And then what that should do is seal that to the casing, just to keep any water out, hopefully. There's the other two. It's the first time I'm trying this stick lock type thing. Don't know how good, how bad it is. It's got a bit more body to it than the liquid, so it kind of like stays on here, but it's really good for putting on the bolts and sealing the threads to keep the moisture out. Hopefully that's what we want it for, and that is what we want it for. So should now be able to just lift that and pop the bolts in, as the whole thing doesn't fall over. Oh god. Sure, somebody somewhere said there's a stand that you can make for these to go on, but as you can see, I don't have that. I'm probably fine, most people don't either. That one's not gone in properly. What's going on with that? Oh, that one's stuck. There we go. So impact guns on the lowest setting, and yeah, we'll just use the bar now, just set and knit them up, or the ratchet, and just make sure they're tight enough what we want. Tight. I think that one's probably spinning. That one's tight. That one's tight. So we'll hold this one with a spanner to and make sure that one's tight, and then we're done. So we're going this way now, aren't we? That's it. Oh, I hope it doesn't catch my fingers. That wouldn't be very nice, would it? There we go, that's them all tightened up. So next thing to do is work on the track control linkage. So we can see here, this is the fork for the control fork. This goes backwards and forwards to move the control valve in the pump. So the bits I built up here are what rub against the piston. And then when the piston comes out, it actually pushes that back, which moves the control valve into the position where it stops it from pumping. So in normal operation, that'll be against there, and the quadrant lever will be in here, pushing on the back of that. And then as this pushes in and out here, it pushes against the quadrant lever and makes the control valve in here move in and out on the pump to control the height adjustment. So as that pushes in, it pivots on here, which then means that comes back. And then as the implement drops, this goes back out, the quadrant stops it from coming this way too far, and the control valve is then in the correct position again. And basically that's it. This just rubs on here constantly, so we'll put some grease on that, and then when the piston comes out, it pushes that back, which then takes the control valve out of the pump position, which is why we have to lock the link arms down if we want to use external services for the hydraulics. Now we can put the bolts in here to hold the back plate, the triangle cover and the felt seal on. What I've done is I've used that Loctite. Now I don't want it for the Loctite, I just want it to seal the threads up, because this is a point where water can actually get into the back of the hydraulics. So because on a bit of an angle, could potentially let water in. I can't see how I'm going to need to take this off again in my lifetime, so put a bit of that thread lock on, hopefully that will seal it up and keep a bit of the water out. We're going to thread lock all these bolts with it as well. Once again, that's in case any water gets in, or the alternative, which I'm really thinking of doing, is getting copper washers to put on the top, and then that will just seal the top up then. Or what I might do is thread lock the top of the bolt to the top of the casing, and I think that's probably on this going to be better than putting thread lock all the way in, because then I can put anti-seize in the actual threads itself. So next thing to do is to slide the tube on. Now that's it, that felt seal. Oh, that doesn't fit in there, look. So I need to put that on, felt seal in there, and then put that cover back on. So we'll quickly whiz them off. So I'll put these two thin stainless steel washers on just so that the socket can pull up against this casing a bit better, because at the moment the wall of the socket hits on the casing. Now that's a really loose fit on there, so I don't need to worry about copper greasing any of this. But what I do need to do is make sure the felt seal, like that, goes in there. That should then be able to slide into there. So we're probably going to have to give that a bit of a tap to make sure that sits in there properly. So we'll bring that round to there. Because I think once I take it off, it's going to be hard to get back on because you can't access the felt seal. So we'll find the hammer and we'll tap it on. There we go. So one thing I do want to do is try and get an O-ring or something to put in there just to stop any water going down that. Or what I'll do is pack it up with grease. There we go, second time lucky. Or was it third time to charm? We get the bolt holes to start in. There we go. Should go. I think the gun's a bit big. They don't need to be mega tight, so we can put the extension on them. Find it. I remember this is only on setting number 1 as well, so it's not overly tight. Just make sure they're snugged up. Check it with a bar. It's always nice just to check these things by hand afterwards. Oh yes, lovely and tight. Tight enough for this job. That'll do me. So next thing's going to be put the spring on. Now the spring hasn't been cleaned. It's going to go for powder coating eventually, I think, so we haven't cleaned it at the moment, so we'll just take that burr off of there with a file and then we can slide that on and copper grease it and put the knuckle on. So now we can put the spring on, put some copper grease on there, packed in the end of the guide with grease as well. So I am looking at that. I'm thinking that cap wants tapping with the hammer to get it sitting a bit better. What it is, the spring is going to be rubbing on that if I don't give it a tap in. Hopefully that's it. I could really do with a bit of wood just to hit on there to push that in. Let me see if I can find a bit of wood. So I've used a bit of wood to knock that in a bit straighter. That's made that fit on there better now, so the spring will push on the back of the sleeve rather than on the tin cover. Yeah, so we will install the knuckle. Yes, that's better on there. And then this will then need to be adjusted up as well when the implement is on and lifted off the ground. You should just be able to spin that by hand. So I just loosely put the knuckle on now, done it up by hand and then done half a turn. I want to try and keep that big stamp writing at the bottom if I can, because it looks a mess and untidy, and I'll keep the smaller writing on the top side. But we are now ready to install the unloading valve. So the unloading valve that this has is just a triangular seat. So what we've done is we've had this in the lathe, we've matched the taper angle and then give it a skim, and what we're going to do is we're going to put extra washer behind it to shim it up for the amount we've taken off, so hopefully we keep the same pressure on the unloading valve. So to do that we're just using an M5 washer, and basically that just, I'll put these washers on in a minute, the shims, but that just fits in there. So we'll put some oil on that, put the shims on, and we'll get that screwed in. And we'll pop some oil on the seat as well. There we go. And then I'm going to use a big square spanner to tighten that, which will probably be the adjustable, because it's only on a copper washer, so it's not too bad. There we go. And the purpose of the unloading valve is for when you get a shock on here and it pushes the piston back in against the hydraulic oil, it will give a relief of excuse me, it will give a release of pressure nearest the cylinder, rather than having to have the hydraulic pressure build up all the way back through the system to where the relief valve is in the pump. So it dumps pressure up here rather than down the bottom in the pump, and saves you blowing the casting apart. Hopefully, as long as our washer isn't too thick. Next job I'm going to do is put the pressure spring for the draft control fork on. Just have a quick look, make sure there's no concerns with wearing it, and that's looking good to me. So we'll hop that on. Now remember, we alter the cylinder here to keep it in the same position, so that we're not putting excess preload on this spring. And the only purpose of the spring is to make sure that hits against there, so that it doesn't just spring apart. What we need to do now is put up some grease on these toes as well, and then that will save any wear then in the future, or not save, but help to mitigate it. So I'm just about to put the quadrant lever back in, and this is the original depth stop that's off it, and this is a replacement from All 20 Parts Company. So if we put the two side by side, I have no idea what that weld's all about. That's just completely unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. So yeah, I've taken a quadrant apart to take this off. I was gonna put the new one in, but what I'm thinking is going to have to grind that flat and then get that replated. So I'll grind that down with a flap wheel. Hopefully they're burned into that pin really well. Yeah, then get that replated, I guess. More expense, more time. Just, yeah. Well, I see what they've done. What they've done is they've put like a rivet through here, and they've actually welded to the head of the rivet rather than putting a pin in and doing it properly. So I think what I'll probably do is just put a new 1/4 UNF or put a new 6mm bolt through that. That's horrible, isn't it? Absolutely horrible. So, as we can see, if I push the lever fully across, the lever hits on the actual stop. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Yeah, if I push the lever fully across, the lever hits on the stop, so I can't even use it. So I'm going to take a picture of that and send it back to them. Next step's to put the quadrant back on, so we'll attempt to get that back in the same position it was before, because clearly it worked before. But we'll leave the bolts loose. We copper greased them up now ready, and that should just be a case of that slides in there like so. Make sure it goes on the correct side of the fork like it is, and then we'll just put the bolts in, and like I said, we'll try and get it back in the same position it was before. Then we can adjust the position of the quadrant as necessary once it's working. So to give you a measurement that you need to set the lever to, I believe when the implement starts to drop, and that's when you've got the quadrant in the correct position. But I do need to check that in the manual. I think it's 2.5 inches that you set the quadrant lever from the maximum lift position. And somewhere here in my gasket should be a hole. Like there. So we'll do the other 2 bolts and then we'll nip that up. But down in here is where the quadrant works with the fork, just down in here now. There's a little pad there that it pushes against, so we put some grease on there and that should help with that.